The first story comes from a woman named Carla. She said she was about 7 years old at the time. Her family was deeply religious, not the kind where you go to church, sometimes the kind where everything revolves around it. Sundays weren't optional, and Easter was the most important day of the year. The church they attended had a basement, and Carla described it like it was part of her childhood itself. Low ceilings, long, folding tables, the smell of grape juice, an old carpet. That kind of place where nothing ever changes. She had been down there her entire life. It was familiar, safe. Nothing about it ever felt wrong. Until that Easter. It had been moved indoors. A late frost had hit overnight, so instead of outside, the Easter egg hunt was held in the basement, and that changed everything. Because instead of open space, kids were running through hallways, corners, storage areas, places they normally never went. Carla said she got separated from the others pretty quickly. She went down a hallway she had never seen before. It was narrow, concrete floor, one overhead, fluorescent light, buzzing, slightly, flickering just enough to feel off. Her footsteps sounded different there, hollow too loud. She remembers that part clearly. She was just looking for eggs, that's all. And then she saw one, near the end of the hallway, tucked behind a metal shelving unit. She walked over, reached down, picked it up, and when she stood back up, that's when she saw them, on the wall. Right in front of her. Crosses, but upside down. Not 1, 6, maybe 7, going up the wall in a line too high for her to reach. Some of them were wooden. One looked like it had been twisted out of wire. They weren't new. The wall had been painted over, and they were still there, like they had been sealed into it. The paint around them had cracked, like something underneath was trying to come through. She didn't scream. She didn't run. She just stood there, holding an Easter egg, staring at something she didn't understand but knew wasn't right, because this was a church. This was supposed to be safe. Nothing like that should have been there. Not hidden like that. Not in a place where children were now running around. She said the worst part wasn't what she saw. It was the feeling that someone had put them there. Carefully, quietly, and knew exactly where they were. She told her mother. Right away, her mother walked down the hallway with her, looked at the wall, and went completely pale. Carla said she had never seen her mother look like that before. Not scared, but like she didn't want to understand what she was seeing. She grabbed Carla's hand and told her very quietly not to tell anyone else. Not her friends, not the other kids, no one. Later, when Carla asked again, they spoke to the pastor, and his response didn't help. He said it was probably from an old congregation, something from before, but he didn't explain, didn't give details, didn't seem surprised, and that made it worse, because it meant someone knew, and no one wanted to talk about it. Years later, Carla went back as an adult. She found the same hallway, the same wall, but the crosses were gone. Completely painted over. Smooth. Clean. Like they had never been there at all. No cracks, no marks, nothing. And that's the part that stayed with her. Not just what she saw, but the fact that someone had put them there in a place where children were meant to feel safe. A place people trusted. A place people believed was protected, and whoever did it had time, access, and a reason. Carla still goes to church, but she says every time she sees a basement door, she pauses, just for a second longer than she needs to, listening. It comes from a man named Daniel, who was 17 when it happened. He's clear about the year, clear about the city, clear about the group. 6 of them. Easter weekend. Parents mostly away, or distracted, the way they sometimes are, when routine collapses for a few days and everyone's guard dips a little without meaning to. There was a park near their neighborhood, the kind adults don't really use after dark, the kind teenagers inherit. A parking lot at the edge, a basketball court with bent rims, A path through trees toward a creek too shallow to swim in, but good enough to sit beside. They knew every inch of it. They'd been going there since they were old enough to be unsupervised. Nothing had ever happened there. That was partly the point. That night they were doing what teenagers do, talking. Sitting on the hoods of two parked cars at the edge of the lot, watching the dark beyond the tree line. Someone had lit a small fire in a metal bin they kept out there. Daniel remembers the sound of it, the way it made the darkness beyond look darker. One of them, his friend Marcus, noticed the man first. He was standing at the far end of the parking lot, just standing, facing them. They noticed him the way you notice a shape at first, processing it as a man before registering what was strange about how still he was. Easter Sunday, after midnight, a man in a rabbit costume. Full body, professional quality. The kind you'd see at a shopping center event. White, with a large painted smile on the mask that didn't change, no matter which angle you looked from. They laughed. Of course they laughed. They were 17, there was a fire, and a man in a rabbit suit at midnight is objectively absurd. One of them called something out. The man didn't move, didn't turn toward the sound or away from it, just stood there, facing them, as if the call hadn't reached him, or as if it had, and he simply didn't care. And here is the part of Daniel's account that everything else pivots on, because this is the moment where it stopped being funny, without any single thing making it not funny. He was just standing there, not moving toward them, not moving away, not reacting at all, just present, at the edge of what the parking lot lights could reach. And the longer he stood there, the less the costume made sense, because nobody walks to a park at midnight on Easter Sunday in a rented rabbit suit by accident. You don't end up there. You go there. You get dressed, and you go there, and you stand there, and you wait. The laughter died slowly. Someone said something quietly. The mood had shifted in that way. It shifts when a group of people all notice the same thing at once, but nobody wants to be the first to name it. Daniel's group decided to leave. The decision happened fast, without full discussion, just a collective tightening. They got in the cars. He was driving his father's. He remembers his hands on the wheel, cold, even though it hadn't been cold a minute before. He looked in the rear view as they pulled out. The man had moved to the edge of the lot, just to the edge, still facing the direction of the cars, still perfectly still, as if he'd crossed exactly as far as the light reached and stopped there, right at the boundary between lit and dark, watching them leave. The way you watch something you expected to leave. What Daniel comes back to every time is the preparation, the costume, the location, the timing. Someone chose this park, this parking lot, this hour. Someone had watched this group enough to know they'd be there. That costume isn't bought the day of. That corner of the lot isn't found by accident. The threat wasn't that the man moved toward them. The threat was that the man already knew where to wait. They drove away. Nothing was ever reported. Nothing technically happened. But Daniel says the six of them talked about it for years. The way you talk about something when you're trying to work out what it actually was. They never landed on an answer. Asterisk, he still thinks about the rearview mirror. The shape at the edge of the light, not chasing, just watching. Story 3 is the one that asks the most of you. The person who submitted this, her name is Renatuk, a long time writing it. You can feel that in how it's structured. She goes back, corrects herself, says no, wait, and starts again. She isn't performing. She's trying to be accurate about something her memory has both preserved and distorted, the way it does when it's been protecting you for a long time. Rena was 22. She had just moved into her first solo apartment, a ground floor unit, in a converted house on a quiet residential street. She'd been there for months. Easter fell in early April that year, still cold, but with those bright mornings that make it feel like winter is finally ending. She was alone for the weekend. Family 4 hours away, planning to drive up Sunday. That Saturday she cleaned, packed, had music and an ordinary day, in a home she was still learning to trust. At some point, she noticed the back door. It opened onto a shared yard, long, dim, overgrown, She rarely used it. It had a deadbolt and a chain lock, both of which she always secured before bed. The chain was unhooked. The deadbolt was still locked, but the chain, the one she was certain she'd fastened, hung loose. She stood there, staring. She went over it again and again, convincing herself she must have forgotten. Eventually, she calmed down, rehooked it, checked everything, and went back to packing. That night, she woke around 4 a.m. She knows the time because she checked her phone immediately. At first, she didn't know what woke her. Then she heard it. Breathing. She's clear about that. Not wind, not pipes breathing. Slow, controlled, very close. Coming from outside her bedroom window, which sat just above ground level. She froze. And here's what she never forgets. The window was cracked open about an inch. Not open, just enough for air. Something she had done every night for 4 months without thinking. The breathing was close enough to be right against the glass. She didn't move. She tried to convince herself it was anything else, but it wasn't. It lasted, she thinks, about 15 minutes. Then it stopped. No footsteps. No movement. Just silence. She turned the light on and stayed like that until morning. At 6 a.m., she got up, locked the window, and never opened it again. Nothing was ever proven, but she kept coming back to the chain. Unhooked. Deadbolt still locked. A chain that can only be undone from the inside. She never figured that out. What stayed with her most wasn't even the door, it was the window. Because maybe memory can fail, but that window had been open the same way every night for months. She keeps wondering who noticed, who had been close enough, often enough, to learn that pattern. She moved out 3 months later. She has never lived on a ground floor since. She says, "I don't think about Easter as a holiday anymore. I think of it as the weekend I realized I wasn't as alone as I thought. That's the cost, not the event, the aftermath. The way it permanently changes how a place, a season, even an open window feels. And that's what connects all 3 of these stories. Not just danger, danger is everywhere. This was something more specific. A studied place. A location someone else had already mapped. Carla's basement. Daniel's parking lot. Rena's apartment. In each case, someone had been there before. Watching. Learning. And the setting mattered, because it was supposed to be safe. A church. A neighborhood park. Your first home alone. The places where you let your guard down. Holidays do that. They soften awareness. They give a kind of permission to relax. And some people read that permission differently. Not as comfort but as opportunity. These stories don't end with the moment. They end years later, in small, involuntary habits, double-checking doors, avoiding dark spaces, noticing sounds no one else hears. The holiday didn't create the danger. It just lowered the drawbridge, and something was already waiting on the other side.